Ahoy! We interrupt our regularly scheduled Deadlock content for some New World news today because there are big things happening unintentionally. As you may recall, the New World Aeternum version of the game will have its quote-unquote open beta from September 13 to September 16 this month, so the end of this week. However, the entire test build got leaked. And it got leaked in a pretty funny way. If you were playing New World before it released, then on your Steam client you would have a very old version of the New World Open Beta, assuming you haven't removed that from your library. And this version was used to update to New World Aeternum Open Beta now. So this will be the client version that we will be using later this week to actually access New World Aeternum. It seems that they didn't really consider that by putting it up early, people would be able to access it. For some reason, the servers were already up. Maybe they're doing some early testing, maybe this is for some journalists or something. But either way, people were able to just log in and try out the things that we are supposed to try out on the weekend. And not just that, of course, this new client can be datamined as well. So New World Database updated their PTR files to what was on this open beta test. And due to this, there's already tons of information out there. Since then, the open beta server has been taken down and the version has been made inaccessible, so you can't actually do that right now. And Amazon has asked Zio to roll back New World Database as well. So a lot of the information is now only accessible with a fair bit of digging, but that doesn't mean that you can't still get a lot of information anyways. Now, I don't want to get myself into any hot waters. I didn't sign an NDA, but I also don't want this video to be taken down. So I am not going to be able to show you screenshots of the new changes or give you precise details about specific items and so on. But there's a fair bit of info, such as Reddit posts and news articles talking about these leaks that haven't been taken down. Many of those even use screenshots, so there shouldn't really be any issue with what I'm about to tell you. With all of this, do keep in mind that this is still a beta stage, so it is possible that some things may change here before release, especially things regarding how you get specific rewards and so on. First, it looks like we are finally getting black, white and red dyes, just very strong colors for those that have been waiting forever, that have been asking forever to have the option to dye their outfits in more neutral ways. Or less neutral if we're talking about red. This is something that seems like a minor change if you haven't played the game for long, but it's been so in demand for so long that it actually is something that a lot of people care about. Much more important for most players, however, will be the gear score change. As you probably know, the max gear score will be increased to 725, but it wasn't really clear how that's going to happen. It appears there will be multiple steps for this. The first one, which is very interesting, is the changed sandworm gear. From what I can tell, I think there will be craftable gear from the sandworm, not 100% sure about that part, but either way it can roll between 700 to 710 gear score. And no, old sandworm caches that you may have stored won't work for this. And this is something to definitely keep in mind, because I'm not entirely sure which other pathways to more than 700 gear score will be open immediately. There might be some, but a lot of them are restricted by other things, so you may actually need 710 gear score items to possibly do the raid. And if that's the case, then people will need to do the sandworm raid first in order to be able to do the new raid. That would on one hand be an interesting model, but on the other hand also a bit weird because the sandworm raid requires twice as many people to do. I haven't heard anything about this being changed in the files in any ways, but I could imagine that maybe they are scaling sandworm a bit more appropriately for 700 gear score, but then also making it 10 players only so that it would align with the other raid. But again, not sure here, just guessing that that is something they might possibly be doing. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Now when it comes to 725 gear score drops, I am not entirely certain about that. There may be some possible ones from the new raid. However, what we can definitely say is that there is new craftable gear from the raid that requires specific resources that you get from the raid. This I think may be one of the primary ways to get 725 gear score gear, but it won't be cheap and there might also be some cooldowns coming into play along with that. Additionally, you can also upgrade your artifacts to 725. So if you haven't upgraded an artifact yet and you're considering to do that in the next weeks, then maybe hold off a little bit because it may be quicker later if you can just skip a step. I'm not sure if that will be possible if you do a normal upgrade first, but either way, there will be an option to get them to 725. And this is not restricted to the raid only. The alternative option is crafting it with a resource from the new free-for-all PvP zone. Other than that, the recipe for upgrading artifacts won't change all too much, so it won't be overly expensive. There also seems to be another new cache that can roll up to 725, which is possibly a weekly Outpost Rush cache, but again, not entirely sure about that and not sure how high the chance is to even get 725. At this point, it's also very unclear what will happen with crafting gear and trophies and other things that were previously needed in order to reach a certain gear score level, and also what happens with other crafting pathways in general, if there will still be an alternative way to reach 725. I could also imagine something like that coming maybe like 3 months later, after you got the initial rush of people doing the raid to do it, then you kind of just open it up in other ways for everyone else. There will also be very significant PvP balance changes that, in my opinion, will actually spice up the combat in a lot of ways. I actually like this. I've been asking for this for ever and ever and ever and ever. Not sure why they decided to do it now, but at least they're doing it now, I guess. Stamina recovery is finally getting hit very heavily, with the stamina value that it grants you being significantly reduced, along with the cooldown being increased as well. A change like that is primarily a hit against light gear users, so maybe saying, hey, what is going on, why are they getting hit so hard? But don't worry, people that are wearing heavier gear than that are also getting hit, more in an indirect way, but one that will significantly affect especially wars, being that the 300 con grit perk is now only for heavy attacks. This will significantly change the impact of certain staggers and knockbacks and pulls on the battlefield, which will also entirely change the weapon meta. Consider, for example, the impact of a flail or a greatsword under these circumstances. Various artifacts got nerfed, such as Sin and Venom, but also Nature's Wrath, which will be a fair bit less potent, especially on fire staffs. The bow is getting something labeled rapid fire spam prevention, so I'm assuming there will be certain checks when firing with a bow now to see how fast you are firing, unless this is just something related to rapid shot. Other abilities also see changes, such as, for example, Meteor Shower applying a light disease, and Shield Bash somehow providing a crit. Splash of Light is getting a knockback around the healer, which works well in combination with less grit being around. There will also be entirely new perk mods, one for example seeming to provide some form of thorns, another one being called Penetrating the Empowered, which I would assume means you get extra penetration against anyone who has an Empower on them, so finally some more counterplay to Empower builds. I haven't seen the description of this perk, but I'm assuming this might be for temporary empowers or empowers that come from abilities, because if this included permanent empowers, then anyone having the wrong ring or using a honing stone would constantly get the effect against them, if that's even how it works in the first place. Last but not least, Zelenin also found something that may indicate that a merged global storage of all your storages may be a thing now, but that's not necessarily going to be included the moment New World Aeternum comes out. It just seems to be somewhere in the files. If we learn more relevant things across the weekend, I will of course let you know, so consider subscribing and clicking the bell to get notified. If you want early trading tips, new post coming today, then consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks to all of my patrons who already do exactly that, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.